report from the University of Redlands. Administrator Aaron Sullivan will introduce the item, and joining her today to answer any questions you may have is Institutional Representative Brian Charest, Interim Dean of Academic Affairs. Dr. Charest, did I pronounce your name correctly?
It's Charest. You were close.
Charest. Got it. Thank you.
Correct.
Does anyone need to recuse himself?
I'll be recused.
We have one recusal, Member McKee. All right, Ms. Sullivan, will you please begin?
Yes, thank you. Just making a note here. All right. So this is the second quarterly report from the University of Redlands. They had their site visit last March, and there were some stipulations associated with this, with the findings of the team, and the COA voted to have the institution provide quarterly reports leading up to their revisit, which is scheduled for late this coming March. So this is their second quarterly report. The third report will come before you at your meeting in late January. So I just want to acknowledge there are several places in the report where I had indicated that information was included but not accessible. And I want to just give you kind of an oral update, because the institution was able to provide access to a number of the links that I couldn't get access to, just not in time for what we all know is our requirement for public deadline to get the report posted. So I just want to thank Brian and his team for continuing to provide me with access to these things. I've tried to read through them, and so I just want to provide you with some updates. So on stipulation 1A, excuse me, the second paragraph on page 3 near the top of the page, where I had indicated that in communications with the institution, it had indicated that it plans to develop a strategy for leveraging existing partnerships to support their structured field experiences, match candidates with strong mentors within their network of local education agencies, and better align their existing early fieldwork assignments for the candidates. I want to acknowledge that while I had said I was not able to receive that information, they actually did get that information in, and I was able to review that, and they continue to make strides toward meeting the stipulation, and I want to just acknowledge that. The next paragraph down, there are sort of 3 items there. Where I had indicated that there was a suggestion that their second quarterly report include course syllabi that clearly show how many hours of field work are included in each applicable course. I did get that. A listing of the LEAs where the institution has identified where early field work will take place in alignment with the learning objectives. I also received that. And that the program ensures candidates are completing this requirement in a timely manner. Again, I received that information as well and was able to review that. For stipulation 1B, little b, at the top of page 4, there is a statement that I had expected that the quarterly report would continue to build out the evidence illustrating where candidates are receiving opportunities throughout the course of their program. The institution was able to provide me with access to 3 key syllabi, but I have not been able to analyze those syllabi. So I just want to acknowledge they did send in evidence. I just need a little time to analyze that, and we'll include additional updates in the quarter 3 report. For 1C, there were some needs for follow-up from the first quarterly report, in which the institution had indicated that they were holding faculty meetings with their education specialist faculty to review the key assignments and the syllabi content to identify where candidates could be given more opportunities to learn, apply, and reflect on the TPEs. They had provided in this report some links to some key assignments. I do want to acknowledge that I was given access to the syllabi that demonstrate that is their evidence demonstrating how TPEs 2.2 and 2.3 are being addressed. I do need to analyze those still. Was not able to, it takes a little time to look through syllabi and see where TPEs are being addressed, as the institutions know when trying to evidence this for us. The 4-phase rollout of new rubrics to grade and track candidate performance data were provided. as well as activities from their Canvas workshop. I was not able still to access those, and the institution will get that for me. And I don't want to make it sound like I didn't see anything. There is a lot of evidence that shows that they are continuing to move forward on some of these things, on all of these things, actually. For 1D, about the middle of that large paragraph on the page, where I talk about how the institution was going to, in the second quarterly report, provide a copy of their proposed site supervisor training materials. I did receive those. They included a narrative stating its goal to produce a comprehensive 8-hour training package and the video presentation that will cover general program training requirements, information about the placement process, etc. These things are sort of still in development. So what I was sent was sort of things that are in process or drafts. So I did indicate there that there is an expectation that the finalized version of these training materials will be included in the third quarterly report, as well as would like to see where collaboration, the institution indicated with regard to collaborating with partners on the design and quality, that they're collaborating with site supervisors. Not sure if site supervisors alone are enough of a collaboration. So we'll continue to work with the institution to provide evidence on that. For 1E, which is now related to their pupil personnel services program. The institution provided in their first quarterly report a practica hour tracking form that was specifying where 80 of the 100 hours of practica activities were occurring across the arc of candidate coursework, and where the remaining 20 hours will be tracked and consist of approved activities and how those forms are being used, they're being evaluated, and prior approval being given to the candidates before they go out and complete those 20 hours. The institution did provide additional information and evidence demonstrating 4 approaches that have been established to ensure that candidates are receiving guidance about what activities are appropriate in order to complete these additional 20 hours. And again, just would like to see maybe a little more evidence in the third quarterly report about actual implementation of these things. Some of this may have to be teased out as part of the interview process in the revisit, to be fair. And then finally, 1F, I just want to acknowledge that in this second quarterly report, again, this is related to basically the school counselor performance expectations, that the institution did provide access to 15 course syllabi, which is all of their courses for the program that have been updated to clearly indicate where the school counselor performance expectations are occurring within each syllabus. The coordinator of the program continues to collaborate with the course instructors from each course to continue analyzing their key course assignments and weekly topics in an effort, again, to continue to ensure that the coursework is effectively structured and offering ample opportunities for candidates to learn, implement, and reflect on the school counseling performance expectations. And so those are my updates for the quarterly report. The rest of the report stands as posted, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And of course, Brian is here, and I'm happy to have him with us.
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. Opportunity for the institution to offer any comment. Dr. Charest, do you have any comment you wish to offer?
Sure. Thank you. Well, first off, good morning, everyone. Great to be here with all of you. I want to apologize first to Erin and her team on the mix-up on the links there. I think we've got it just about all sorted out now, and hopefully this is not going to happen again in the future. I also just want to thank all of you on the committee for your work here. Special thank you to Erin Sullivan and Rosemary Wren for their work with our team at the University of Redlands. The University of Redlands team has done a tremendous amount of work to respond to the stipulations. I think, Erin, you did a great job outlining, updating the report with much of what has been done for the second quarterly report. I'll just share a couple of highlights with you all. Our early fieldwork site now lists all the districts that are willing to host our candidates, along with the names of teachers and disability categories that can be hosted at those specific sites, so that teachers and students have access to this information when setting up early fieldwork visits. Our EDSP syllabi now address all 8 categories of disability. Assignments are also clearly outlined for each course and align with those categories as well. We do have rubrics. It sounds like Aaron still needs to get a hold of those that show how the key assignments align with TPEs for this program. And I'll just also share that we believe that we have fully addressed the stipulation related to how we're using TPA data to inform program improvements, which is exciting to be able to say that we're now doing. I think that's it for my highlights, and I'm happy to answer questions if folks have them.
Thank you, Dr. Charest. Appreciate it. Committee members, opportunity for you to offer any comments or questions, engage in discussion. Member Hallis.
First of all, thank you for all your hard work on this and your staff's hard work. I know some of these stipulations seem to be around kind of candidate experience. What has the role been in maybe reaching out to completers or current candidates and in maybe shaping some of these changes and updates?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have a new office of licensure and credentialing that works closely with candidates, current candidates and past candidates. And we are currently working to host a partner convening before the end of this term. And the goal is to bring in not just LEAs, but also alumni, former candidates and current candidates to kind of discuss their experience with the program.
Thank you. Any other committee member? Member Hillis.
Again, thanks for all your work on this. It's always it's a big lift to address a lot of these. One of the questions that I had is with the new PPS standards, obviously there's been a significant shift in the way that the field work is actually planned out and collaborated with the LEAs. And I'm just curious if you could reflect a little bit. I know it's a challenge from the IHE perspective, but it's also puts a strain on the LEAs as well, as they've been experienced in dealing with PPS candidates in a certain way over a number of years. And if you could just talk a little bit about how that's gone in your partnerships with your local education agencies.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. It's a great question. I appreciate you acknowledging sort of the logistical and capacity challenges around doing some of this work. Again, I'm going to point to this partner convening that we have coming up, and not that this will necessarily be a panacea for all issues that we are trying to tackle, but that is one of the ways that we hope to be in more direct dialogue with our partners, with our LEAs, kind of get in the same room with folks. Up to this point, the program coordinator for the PPS program has, worked hard to connect with LEAs and to be in dialogue about, what these practica and field experiences should be like and what they could be like, and how we can sort of mutually support one another in this work.
Thank you. Any other comments from committee members? Casey? Oh, your member Cervantes.
Yeah, no, kudos on it's a work in progress. So kudos on continuing to move things forward. Just a curiosity on your 8-hour training. I know it's not, it's information and you're developing it. Can you speak a little bit as to what you're going to be covering, what the training package includes? I mean, I know you have supervision, working alliances and so forth, but maybe a deeper dive just to get a sense to, I guess for me, it's not so much that you're covering the topics in training, but how are you making sure that your candidates are being able to also then apply that directly in their specific settings and contexts?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I wish I had my program coordinator here to help me answer this one. I mean, what I can tell you is sort of broad outlines that the goal is to, have a very detailed training that addresses, the needs of both candidates and field supervisors, and have it hosted on a Canvas site so that it's easily accessible for folks. And this is something that we've modeled in other programs, and so there's a precedent for it here at our institution. And I can potentially dig up there's a link in the Q2 report that goes to the new handbook that they have developed, that is really kind of the outline, if you will, for what this training will look like.
Can I jump in? Brian, because I have the report open in front of me, and I won't read directly out of the supervisor training materials, but the narrative that the institution provided does talk about the training package, including not comprehensively here, but topics such as models of supervision, school counseling supervision models, supervisory working alliance, the parallel process, countertransference, direct observation, gatekeeping, triadic and group supervision, self-care, and more. So these are some of the things that will be covered in their training.
Thank you, Aaron.
Great. Thank you. Yep. Thank you all. Any other further comments or questions? All right. Seeing none, this is an action item. Is there a motion? Member Crecia.
I move that we accept the University of Redlands second quarterly report.
So moved. Is there a second? Second by Member Hallis. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. All opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously. Thank you for joining us and for your work, Dr. Charest. We look forward to the ongoing work. And thank you, Ms. Sullivan, with the details. Appreciate it.
Of course, and I just want to thank Brian. So Brian will be taking sabbatical next semester. So the third quarterly report, we will have another representative from Redlands joining us, who I've worked with. So they're all wonderful, but I just want to wish Brian all the best. I know we still have a couple of months of work that we'll be doing together before he takes off, but I just want to acknowledge that he has been here with us and will be taking, I'm sure, a well-deserved sabbatical next spring.
Great. Congratulations, Dr. Charest. Enjoy your time.
Thank you all, and I appreciate your questions today. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye. Just so the committee and those who are listening knows what the procedure will be at this point, we're going to go on to item 13, and after that, we'll take a lunch. And then depending on when we reconvene, we do have item 6 for the morning to get back to. But then we will move on. Then we have a 1 o'clock time certain, which is item 16. So we're going to play it all by ear, but right now we're going to go on to item 13. It's the policy discussion, the start date of provisional period and setting of time frame for approved institutions to initiate or reinitiate operation of programs. Administrator Aaron Sullivan and consultants Poonam Beatty and Hart Boyd will introduce the item, and this is an information or action item. Ms. Sullivan, will you please begin?
Yes, happy to. Thank you. To just start off and to acknowledge Hart Boyd and Poonam Beatty are members of our initial institutional approval team. Michelle Williams-George, who recently left us, was the third on that team, but in her absence, it is back to just Hart and Poonam, which it was just the two of them for a very long time. We have opted to have me present the item, and then they will be here to answer questions about the IIA process, which is the first item that we'll be talking about. Okay, so this agenda item does have 2 topics in it for consideration. They are somewhat related, but they're different enough that we're sort of presenting it in 2 chunks. So the first topic is consideration of approval of some language that would specify the start date for programs in stage 4, which is the stage what you just granted to Mills at Northeastern earlier for their early childhood special education program. We just have found that it might be a really good idea for the COA, frankly, for staff, of course, and for programs to be very clear about what is the start date for their provisional approval, because the process involves first them getting approval from the commission in stage 3, which includes the language then that their provisional approval period will be 2 to 3 years. Then sometimes it can be 6 months before they're able to come fully before the COA for program approval. And, when does that provisional period start? Did it start with the commission or does it start when their program is approved? Staff thinks that it makes good sense that the provisional period start when their program is approved. So start date would be the date of COA approval in stage 4. So again, Mills at Northeastern, the start date for their 2 to 3 year period would be today. And we will, if the committee agrees with this and you vote to approve this, you have in Appendix A recommended language in your accreditation handbook that will specify this. And then we will also add a sentence in the approval letter that goes out after your COA meetings to also clarify this for the programs. So that's the first part of the item. And I don't know if chairs, if you would like to stop and vote on this or discuss this now, because the next piece is, I think, different enough that it could be confusing.
It sounds best on your recommendation, do one at a time.
Great. So we're happy to answer any questions you may have, but the staff recommendation is that the COA would approve the policy that the start date of an institution's provisional period begin on the date the COA approves their program in stage 4. And if you vote to enact this, we will update the handbook language as it has been shown to you in Appendix A, and then also take additional steps to ensure that programs in the public are aware of this start date time.
And anybody who does a motion has to repeat exactly what you just heard.
You can the staff recommendation is here.
All right.
Just one little thing to add to that is when the item goes to the commission, we will add something that says that the recommendation for action is that it start at the same time
Very
as
specific,
COA
yeah.
approval, so that it's all on the same page. It's all
Right.
consistent.
What are reasons not to do this?
None. I mean, staff doesn't see any reason not to do this. We don't think that it burdens you or the field, certainly. And those are really the two big groups of folks we're usually thinking about.
Right.
This just makes it more clear to the applicants, right?
Mhm. Member Morrison?
I think this is a good idea. I'm just curious, what's the difference usually between the two events, the CTC meeting and our meeting?
I'm going to let Poonam and Hart, if you have a general sense of about how long it takes us to get someone from stage 3 to stage 4.
Well, like we tell all the institutions going through this, it really depends on the submission. It can be anywhere from a few months to a year, in all honesty. So, yeah, as Member Taylor mentioned, this just really clarifies it, because before we were going off of the assumption that the provisional period started upon commission approval, and then that was just putting some institutions into sort of a time frame bind at the end of stage 5 when they were going to be having their site visits. So
Thank you. Makes sense.
I think the Mills Northeastern one we saw was one of the fastest, right? From commission approval to here.
yeah, they just were approved in June, but they had some quality submissions, so they were able to get approved fairly quickly.
That's a quick one. Member Cervantes, you had
Just quickly, would it apply retroactively to mills and the ones just that we sort of just went through maybe a few months back? I believe in going clean, right? If it's all or not. I mean, but I just wanted to ask that out loud.
I mean, that's a good question. I think we could certainly reach out to clarify to institutions that were recently approved, just to make sure. Part of it too is to help keep them moving toward, the finalization, which is that provisional site visit. So I think we can certainly talk to the programs that have been approved. Things have slowed down a little bit recently, and I say that as an administrator looking at 8 provisional site visits potentially in 24-25, which is, I was like, what happened in 2021? But that was COVID. I think we all asked what happened in 2021. So yeah, I think we can reach out to those institutions and just provide them some clarity. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further questions? All right, this is an action item. Is there a motion? And you can read the recommendation. It's there. It's on the information on page 1 of item 13 in our notes. So it's essentially could be approval of the updated accreditation handbook, chapter 3 for posting at the commission's website. That's it. All right, Member Hallis, go for it.
I move we recommend the approval of the updated accreditation handbook, chapter 3 for posting to the commission's website.
So moved. Is there a second? Second by Member Cervantes. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. All opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you. So item 2 of yours. Be great.
Yes. Okay. So this one's a little trickier. Just to let you know, staff is always happy to come back at another time with additional information, or if you want to drill down on one aspect of this. But basically, we had a couple of instances. The one that you're directly aware of was the request of a program at your June meeting. They had withdrawn all of their programs, but they wanted to be allowed to remain as an approved program sponsor for a period of time. In that particular case, one of the COA members asked, do we have a policy around this? The handbook has a policy stating that an institution, once it withdraws all of its programs, becomes no longer an approved program sponsor. So in general, that's the policy. However, it seems as if between that situation and another situation that we had where an institution in provisional approval had not initiated their program in as timely a manner as we would have liked. And I just want to say there too, we have put some more measures in place in the IIA process where we touch these programs a little more often. So I would think that we would learn a lot sooner from an institution now if they hadn't initiated a program right away. But again, just to keep things clear for the field and for the COA and for the staff to allow us to provide guidance, we just are asking if the COA would like to consider institutions that are currently approved program sponsors that withdraw all of their programs. Should there be an allowable period of time where they can continue to be approved program sponsors without offering any programs? Should there be, for instance, some cases around what might constitute allowances, right? Should they be granted carte blanche, or should there be some considerations given? For institutions in provisional approval, again, what constitutes swift initiation of their program? Cheryl, I see you reaching for your microphone.
Just wanted to clarify our policy, because our policy says that that there can be an exception to us closing an institution. And this came from Butte County many, many years ago, where they wanted to close their, I think it was their teacher induction at the time, and they knew that they were going to reissue it, but they were completely revamping everything about it. So they said, we want to close this right now, clean slate, and start something anew in like a year. And so we put in the committee approved a clause that says we close the institution down when all programs are withdrawn, but exceptions can be made if the COA approves. But what we didn't do is put a timeline on that. So that's the piece I think that this all comes into play. So it's allowable. I think we've used it 3 times, maybe 2 LEAs and 1 IHE, I believe, that we're completely revamping something. But we've never put a timeline on there. And I think that's where the question came up last time, is like, well, is there a timeline? And I think that's a great idea. And what Aaron,
yeah, thank you so much, Cheryl, for jumping in.
That's okay. I just wanted to be clear that we do have that policy.
Yeah. So again, we have the issue of currently approved program sponsors, but also these provisional institutions, and just trying to maybe put some parameters around what constitutes basically initiation of a program, like how quickly do we want them to get moving? And if they don't move in a timely manner, especially with provisional institutions, right, they've got that 2 to 3 year period where they have a site visit coming up. If they don't initiate in a timely manner, that can cause problems, because we need some we need some cohorts to move through their program. So we have people to interview as completers of their program. And so, if they don't initiate right away, then our question is too, from a staff perspective, what do we do with that program? Do we allow them to have an extension? Do we take that request? Do we need to create a process by which they can request an extension? Do they request it with the COA or the commission? There's really a lot to untangle here, but we're hoping just at least to start this conversation and get maybe an idea of what your preferences are. Depending on where we go, we may need to take an item to the commission as well, because they have a big role, obviously, in this IIA process. It's their process that they devised. So on page 3 of the item, there are some recommendations there for some discussion topics that will certainly help staff to answer these questions. And then we also have on that final page questions the COA may wish to consider. This is just, it's not exhaustive, but it was staff kind of trying to help you unpack this a little bit and maybe have some starting points for some of the discussion.
And just so we're clear, your hope is that we emerge from this meeting with a decision rather than consider and come back at a later time.
Well, I mean, it's an action item. It doesn't mean you have to take action.
Yeah.
So, you may begin this discussion and you may have some action items for staff, meaning you may need to give us some directive to bring you more information, to maybe flesh some things out a little bit more for you so that you're not sort of drafting things at the table. That can get very confusing. So, if you have this discussion, if you can land on some of these potential actions that are in next steps, great. If you need for us to bring you something that has a little more form to it so that it's a little more clear what you're acting on, we can certainly do that as well.
Okay, great. Thanks for the parameters. That helps. All right, members, let's start with Member Cervantes, then Member McKee.
Yeah, no, I mean, one thing is to have to discuss a time frame, but to me, as I'd like to discuss maybe holistically what due process on this would be. If someone is gonna shelve their program, what are parameters, acceptable parameters for that kind of shelving? Like what are the reasons why we would be okay with that? And I think that also predicates specific time periods that we might be okay with. So this is your reason, sounds like a year. This is your reason, maybe you only need 6 months. And the decision this body can make is, okay, university so-and-so, you're not gonna offer this program. Based on that reason, in 6 months, you either gotta do something or, we no longer have it. I mean, I'd love to approach it that way, because then it provides the added layer of clarity on what the the program sponsors would have to do to keep their programs going, I guess.
Okay, Action Member McKee, then Gracia.
And I think that's where you are all definitely the experts. Because I think about if a program was to close, and let's just say their scenario was accreditation didn't go well and they decided to close everything, and they have new leadership decides to open it up again. I would imagine if they were Indigo, they can no longer be on Indigo because now they have to be on a different cycle. So then there's that domino effect. And I think that's why you're bringing it forward, because that's the big picture. It changes all the timelines. So I would think that they need to be held to the timeline that could give staff the opportunity to provide the feedback. Like if they had to have 2 years to have a program in place, if they shelf and they got to have 2 years again, like whatever the timeline everyone else is held to, they should still be held to that timeline. Or if they close, they go through the entire process all over again to begin a new program. That's extensive, but then there should be a time frame. So I think I love the idea of wrapping things in a time frame, but also there's individual circumstances, and we don't know all that, and we can't surmise what all those possible circumstances could be. But I would hate to have any process that we go through change because they were on a different timeline. I think those timelines have to move with whatever change they have, if that makes sense. If they decide to close a year, then everything goes an extra year. So like it all has to move accordingly. Mathematically, I think I was trying to think of.
Anybody watch Loki with timelines? Anybody? That's okay. Okay. Timeline reference. Member Gracia.
So kind of along those lines, I would, what I was thinking is, yes, there's definitely going to be some specific reasons. I definitely agree that there definitely needs to be a timeline of some sort. And I was just wondering, like you were saying, maybe directives, I'm just curious as to, generally speaking, what are some of these reasons? Like, Cheryl, you mentioned the one instance where they just wanted to start new, and then I don't know what some of these, some of the other reasons are. Maybe there weren't enough candidates, whatever. So, and again, to your point, and where do they fall on that continuum? Like, where were they? Were they, were they indigo and now they violet, or whatever it is. But I do think it's a good discussion. I do think we're probably going to need some more info.
Yeah, and just listening to you, I'm just thinking about my own personal experience as an induction coordinator in a district where from one year to the next, there was no induction because there were 209 teachers who were summarily let go. And there was no need for induction. And people so far above my pay grade made that decision, and it left everyone in the lurch. So I'm thinking the reason for going on ice, like to Member Cervantes's point, is important thing. It's almost like conditional time frames, because if that had stuck in my district, I mean, it would have been a violation of our duty to like these new teachers. If somehow somebody had said, well, we're not going to pay that $1,300 or $1,500, and we're gonna stop offering this program, like they didn't realize what they were doing, which, I mean, I know that sounds hard to believe that people in our state wouldn't understand like the importance of accreditation, but there are people who could make those decisions for, misguided reasons. So I think Member Gracia's question about like, do we know why programs, what is the profile of this? And you said, Ms. Member McKee, that we're not going to know what all these reasons, but maybe compile a list of possible scenarios or trigger events. Funding, lack of leadership, I mean, I can predict what they might be. Maybe we could then speculate, maybe we could come up with like a more relevant plan, keeping in mind the beneficiaries of these accreditation programs, like thinking about how the actions are going to impact teacher candidates, just thinking about that. I mean, I feel like I'm just kind of like talking out loud, but if we could maybe assemble a reasonable list of causes, then we could match that to potential recommendations based on staff's suggestion, maybe. I don't know, like a table of some kind.
If I could, and I know we had some COA members waiting to comment still, I want to be clear that there's a difference between a program being inactive and a program being fully withdrawn. So if an institution fully withdraws a program, even if they continue to be an approved program sponsor, so let's say they've got 3 programs, they withdraw 1. They have to wait 2 years before they can come back and they have to come back through the IPR process to bring even that same program back online. It's why so many institutions choose inactive instead, because they get 5 years then to think about, are we going to reactivate this program? Or are we going to withdraw it? So that's kind of the on ice part, right? They can put it on ice while they're thinking about it. Once it's fully withdrawn, whether they do it or whether we get to the end of that 5 years and we do it automatically, which is something that you all have the authority to do. Once it's fully withdrawn, they have to reapply for IPR. The question on the table is, and maybe this is where it could have been split into 3 parts, so I apologize. If it's a currently approved program sponsor, so not a provisional institution, if they withdraw all of their programs and then request consideration to be allowed to remain as an approved program sponsor for a period of time, because now they're thinking we might want to offer a program. And in the case of the institution that was before you in June, they had another institution sort of come in, they merged with another institution at the last minute, meaning they didn't know that this was going to be happening when they were withdrawing their programs. And so when it happened, it kind of breathed some new life into their thinking around being an approved program sponsor. And they asked to be given some consideration. Can we have a year to think about this? Because now we think we actually might be able to offer some programs and we'd like that time. So that was an interesting circumstance, right? They merged with another institution. In the case of the provisional institution, they had a massive change in their leadership as well. And so now they're thinking there are a lot of folks there who didn't walk with us through the first 4 stages of the IIA process. And it could be beneficial to have those folks go back and restart, or, based on staff's experience with them, would there be, an opportunity for them to maybe ask for an extension of time on their provisional period, which again, is not something we have in our policy. But if we could get something clear that says that a program in stage 4, right? So we now know that their provisional period begins on COA approval. Is there something that we also need to say to them that says you need to now initiate this program that you've been approved to offer within 9 months, within a year? Or we need to have a conversation with you about why you haven't, what needs to be done, that kind of a thing.
Thanks for the additional info. Did you want to piggyback on that? I don't remember Hollis and member Lee are still waiting.
Just to clarify.
Sure.
Okay, so there's kind of 2 things. We got the whole provisional situation, and what you just said makes sense to me. Within 9 months or a year, that I would suggest, like, let's get off and running. Don't propose it and then not do it. I mean, I think that's this third part. The thing about being staying alive, kind of, even though all of your programs are inactive, it sounds like 2 years. Is it 2 years from when you not inactive, when you discontinue, when you withdraw a program, you can't propose it again for 2 years, right, Erin?
Yes, the program itself cannot be,
Okay.
they have to wait 2 years.
And right now, there's no timeline to keep an institution able to bring anything back if all of those programs have been withdrawn. It's just kind of like hangs out, right? That's what we're trying to figure out.
They withdraw all the programs. There is an expectation that the next thing is that it's institution closure.
Right. So, I mean, maybe something like, what, 2 years? Because, I mean, just the whole, if you're not on the radar with CTC, you're not important. Nobody's thinking about you. Nobody's putting resources toward those programs or anything. I mean, you have to, preconditions, right? You got to rebuild from like the ground up. I think any more than 2 years go by, you're dead in the water. That becomes part of the resolution then, or the, yeah.
I think I've seen 5. Everybody on it. I just wanted to.
Perfect. Just thinking through this, we always want to assume positive presuppositions, but is there any way this can be used, maybe nefariously, stall tactics? Like you said, maybe we do have staff change. We're not ready for a site visit. We know we have this period where we can buy ourselves some time. And is that maybe what they need? Is that necessarily a bad thing? I'm also thinking about maybe program fees, right? There's accreditation fees. So if they're on ice for 2 years, maybe are they doing it? We don't have it in the budget. We're going to take a year off and come back. So just considerations floating around.
Thank you. And then member Lee, your question or comment was answered. Okay, member Morrison.
What would be why wouldn't an institution put it on ice? Do they know that there's that choice, or do they think they have to withdraw the program? They all know they can keep it inactive. And why wouldn't they just keep it inactive if they were going through some kind of turmoil? Why wouldn't they make
6
it?
feet under, right? On ice is like inactive. 6 feet under, it's
Inactive.
dead.
Yeah. So why wouldn't you just make it inactive? What would be the cost or the inconvenience of that?
The institution in June thought that they were going to stop offering educator prep programs. So they started the process of withdrawing all the programs. And then this merger happened. And like I said, it kind of breathed new life into their School of Ed. And they said, well, wait, actually, we may now have the resources and the support that we need to offer educator prep programs. And we would like, rather than to now become a closed institution, closed by our standards, we would like some consideration to remain open while we think about getting a proposal in. So that in that case, that was very specific. And I think that was also with the county office that came before was,
Yeah.
they thought they were going to stop offering. And then there were some changes that breathed some new life into them and reinvigorated the people that wanted to be offering these programs. And they said, can we have a minute here? Because we think we can do this again.
Exactly. And the IIA process is quite intense, as our staff can attest to here. So, if that's what we're trying to find the sweet spot between, if it also helps with our workload as well as their workload, if there's a chance, we do advise as many programs as possible to go inactive if there's any shred of doubt of what they're doing, because they have that 5-year window to really make a decision. But yeah.
Member Hillis?
Aaron, that what you just landed on was one of the things that kind of jumped in my mind. The switching of ownership or leadership, because I think we all know in institutions, if you change significantly the overall leadership, the assumption that things will stay the same is a huge leap. And what I was wondering is, could there be some kind of document that would basically be required in a situation like that, where the new leadership basically says, we promise to, uphold what previously was approved I don't know what that would look like, but, something that gives us some assurance that change in ownership retains what previously got approved.
I think yes. I think we actually have some things in place. For instance, some of our preconditions submissions require assurances from program leadership, from unit leadership, that things will happen. So certainly if there's a change in leadership, an easy thing to do is to get those preconditions resubmitted, especially those statements of assurance updated with whoever the new unit head is. And there are probably some common standards we could also have them sort of respond to make sure that their new leadership understands their role now as a commission program sponsor.
Member McKee?
And just a thought, and I want to thank you for the clarification of inactive versus withdrawn. That helped out significantly in understanding. It's almost a thought that came to my mind is, if they only have one program left, right, and that's what we're talking about, and they decide to withdraw that last program, then they're closed. Is it a possibility if it's that last one program yet that they're automatically just inactive for a year, and letting them know this is your last program, so you're going to be inactive for a year. You still have to pay the fees and everything else. And then they have that year that they could pull back out, that we don't let them close is just, maybe there's reasons why that wouldn't be good. But the other part is, like, if they're inactive, and this is my newbie question, do they change cohorts, or do they have to still turn things in as being inactive? And is that another consideration?
You want me to take that? The accreditation handbook says that the accreditation is handled in a modified manner for inactive. And it all depends on what's happened around that. So they're inactive, they still pay fees. That you have to have less than 15 candidates. So you may be teaching out the last 15 candidates. You're not enrolling or admitting new candidates into the program. And we're very strict about that. So, but essentially, we don't change their cohort until if they decide they want to reactivate, then we figure out on a case by case basis what they need to submit. So if standards change during the 5-year period they were inactive, they would have to write to the new standards. If it was, we need updated preconditions almost always, things like that. So we sit down and we figure, okay, what happened in this credential area and what does that mean? If they had a site visit, like they have other programs and one program is inactive, we take that into consideration too, to try to figure out what we need to have them do. And then it comes to you to reactivate them.
Also, if I can just add to that, again, inactive programs, typically an institution makes 1 or 2 of their menu of programs inactive. So they're still active in the accreditation process because all of their other programs have to go through accreditation and all of that. So we don't need to move them to a new cohort because they're still active in their cohort. It's just those 2 programs are on ice, if you will. Whereas if an institution withdraws all of their programs, they're not continuing to participate in, like, let's say the ADS and, some other thing. I suppose we could create another modified situation in which, for instance, if the COA likes the idea of a program that has withdrawn everything continues to be itself an inactive program sponsor for a year, I suppose we could still, well, it would depend on where they were. I'm like, we could still ask them to submit preconditions, but I don't know what that would do, but that might move them to a new if they come back after a year and say, now we want to offer a program, they're going to have to send that program through IPR anyway. And then once it gets approved, it could switch them to a new cohort, I suppose. Might make sense, but yeah.
Let me see if my mic's on here. Yeah, there we go. I would suggest that whatever language comes, there's so many what ifs and the complexities of all the different LEAs and IHEs that are involved in these various programs. We just have language. I always want to err on the side of helping the people that receive the services from the programs. So allowing us the flexibility, so language to come forward that would allow, the commission and the COA, the flexibility to assist, make sure that they're meeting the standards, but also assist them to get things back going if the circumstances change. We don't want it to be so cumbersome that some of these smaller LEAs that may have had programs and because of leadership change or fiscal, in the district I used to be at the district level, and we put ours on ice, and we didn't put it 6 feet under. We put it on ice because of the Great Recession, and so that was a situation where we had to make cuts. But later, we call it the AED initiative, zapped it back to life. I don't know, but let's give ourselves flexibility so that we kind of, you started the analogy. So I'm sorry. Let's give ourselves the flexibility to support candidates, because if something goes away and it becomes too cumbersome to reactivate, it's those teachers, those educators in those areas that are so diverse in California that are really going to be suffering. So let's just come back with some language that allows some flexibility regardless of circumstance.
So at this point, members, do you feel comfortable just offering a basic recommendation like Member Lee had? Is there any other information you'd like to share or move forward, discuss further for the staff? And staff, are you hoping for anything more specific or definitive from us at this point?
So if I can, just to help my own thinking on this. So in the recommendations on page 3, starting at the top, would the COA like to set a time period by which an institution has been approved to operate? Okay, so an approved program sponsor that withdraws all its programs. It sounds like potentially you would like staff to come back with a recommendation for a time period that a program sponsor is allowed to sort of stay active as a program sponsor, even though it's withdrawn all of its programs. And so there's some potential there. And I think I heard possibly a year seemed to make some sense, at least initially. You'll have, of course, a chance to modify that if you discuss at the next meeting and you think, no, a year is not right. It needs to be 6 months or 2 years or something.
I think I was hearing a year as well. Co-Chair Chakowski.
Regarding we have a section of our why don't we just these situations under that umbrella. The 1 year with an asterisk, subject, there could be exceptions to the viewed example, et cetera, pending COA.
Okay.
I mean, along those same lines, that's sort of where I've been going with this. I'd love to just take staff, defer to staff and let staff tell us what the time frame is, like not even start with the year. Every circumstance will be different. So staff can come in and say 6 months and here are our reasons why. And then we look at that recommendation, we can accept it or not and move on from there. But I'd like to avoid any type of rigidity there's a comment there. We don't want to adversely affect any of the candidates or.
Isn't it? I mean, and then that puts a lot more work on the staff.
It would be helpful if there was a, if staff is going to bring you recommendations on a case by case basis, if there was something like 6 months to 2 years, like if we knew, especially it's helpful for the institutions to know you could be granted anywhere from as little as 6 months to as much as 2 years. So it's not a huge open-ended where a program might say, I want 5 years or something, Okay.
And just everybody call your attention to, my mic is on. Oh.
I did see Hart lean in, and from an IIA perspective, if he has something to say.
Sure, please.
It was actually pretty much going to be what you were saying. I was going to say up to 2 years, and then we would have some flexibility with it, something like that.
Yeah, that works. Looking at page 4, also there are the questions again that the COA may wish to consider. So we're looking at bullet point 1 seems to be where our discussion is now.
Okay, so then the next one was really about, and we could come back for more conversation about this, but this was where an institution, so this is a provisional institution. They're in stage 4. They've started the clock ticking with COA approval. So sorry, I know this makes Hart cringe. They're technically in stage 5. Stage 4 is getting your approval. Once they get your approval, they're in stage 5. But if they don't initiate their program within a certain period of time, what is there something there, or then again, does this go back to kind of a case by case basis where staff might come back to you to say, look, this institution has just indicated to us that they haven't started operation and we're a year and a half in to a 3-year approval process, and we're not going to have a considerable enough cohort to interview. We can't do a quality provisional site visit. Is there something there that you would like for us to consider a policy around that we could bring back to you, where these institutions either have to start over again or resubmit their provisional period, or maybe they need to go back to the commission? Maybe you're not comfortable with that and you're like, they should go back to stage 3.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And I think any recommendation we'd like to have, we want to be cognizant of the time and energy and man hours it's going to take to get the job done from the staff here. They're considerably overwhelmed. So I would just want to be certain that we don't continually give them vagueness, which then results in them doing either unnecessary or duplication of work or efforts. So we can provide enough parameters and guidelines that they don't feel that they are now overwhelmed. How about more overwhelmed? Maybe that's better.
I don't know if we're going to reach conclusion on this because we have 1 o'clock time certain thing, right? And we might have to scurry and do things like eat food and other things like that. But what if we said, initiate the program, have people doing it within a year, or you resubmit your preconditions? I mean, I don't know, within a year.
I think
is that too long a time?
No, but I think preconditions might not be as consequent. It almost really like answers my question and staff's question that it kind of needs to be a case by case basis, because I think it needs to be about why haven't they initiated? And in the
Yeah.
case of this provisional site visit, there was a lot of turnover at like a leadership level.
That's what I'm
So it
thinking.
almost seems to go beyond just, okay, we haven't initiated this program. Whereas if it was, they made changes, maybe we need for them to resubmit certain aspects of their program proposal because it's now been a year or a year and a half. I really am hoping that the stopgaps that we have in place now will stop this from happening because we are touching these programs a lot after they receive approval. So it does almost seem like it could be case by case. If it's an institutional change, it probably needs to go back to the commission for that stage 3 for those preconditions and some of the common standards. If it's just a matter of maybe turnover at the program itself, leadership level or staff level, or they've decided they want to offer the program in a very different way, then it might be resubmission of that programmatic documentation, which comes back to you. So.
Right. We are up against the clock, and I think we should be at a point now to make some recommendation, at least to a proposal for the staff to consider. So, Member Hallis, I did see you put your hand up. Did you want to?
I was going to ask real quick, maybe they have to present a quarterly report to us as to what the delay is in terms of not initiating,
good
right?
idea.
And then we could have the staff recommendation off of that and take that as a case by case.
Well,
Yeah, I think we could. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, and that encourages them to be participatory and not just sit idly by waiting for the right time, but that it's always within their process and their
Always
planning.
watching.
It could be a case where if an institution makes a request like that we bring the institution back
Mhm.
to you with an agenda item saying this institution has requested this extension. And then you have an opportunity to talk to them about that and potentially give staff direction about, okay, we're okay with this extension, but we want the institution to submit these things.
I would like us, and this is staff work that we can do after this meeting for the next item, but I would like us to come up with some criteria here. I guess
Mhm.
I'm a little harder on provisional on the front end because I feel like, they've committed, we've put a lot of time and effort into this. They think they're going to do it. Now, there may be things out of their control, but at the same time, I think we hold them to a certain time frame. And if they can't do it, that's, to me, says a lot about whether or not they can be a program sponsor anyways. So I think that, so I think, we can think about criteria, all the things that we've talked about today, but also maybe criteria for allowing this extension.
Okay, with all the discussion, do we have the recommendation? We had the 6 months, 2 years, but
On the other
anything,
end.
what are some other specifics we wish to offer? I'm sorry, Aaron, you had something you were going to say earlier too.
No, I didn't want to jump in front of any of the COA members, but I just wanted to say this has been very helpful because the 4 of us have had a number of conversations about this. And so just talking about this, I feel like maybe I've done more talking than you all have, but it's been really helpful to talk it through with all of you and hear sort of your thinking and some of your, get some of your guidance. I whether we come away from this with like some decision or not, I think we have a lot now to take away from this and staff can come back to you with something that makes sense.
You haven't talked much at all. I mean, the processes much deeper than we do, but so it kind of helps give some guidance, definitely. All right.
So for the next, we can anticipate a recommendation from you about this at one of our upcoming meetings then? Is that what I hear?
Yeah,
Cool.
and in fact, if you'd like to, you could direct staff to bring something back to you at a future meeting, so you can bring some closure to this item if that will help.
Yep. So we want to be able to summarize what's taking place here to give direction to staff. So we'll not take a chance, take a shot at it. All right, Coach Tchaikovsky.
So I guess I'd like to request that staff offer a proposal for time frames surrounding provisional approval for the initiation of program activities. And secondly, a time frame and process regarding programs that have withdrawn all programs, but may wish to I won't say stay on ice, not experience institutional closure. Yeah, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think it's time for lunch. Thank you very much for bringing this to the table here in the discussion. Really do appreciate it. Thanks. As always, staff does an amazing job. And thank you all for the discussion, your thoughtful questions and comments. Appreciate it. So we're going to go ahead and do a lunch. We do have a 1 o'clock time certain. If we can be ready to go like 1 o'clock. Okay. All right. All right. So we'll see you back at 1 o'clock. Thank you.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the second part of today's meeting. We're going to resume with item 16, which is the report of the accreditation team to Monterey County Office of Education. Consultants Dr. Sarah Solari Colombini and Steph Morgado will introduce this item. Joining them today to answer any questions you may have are institutional representatives. Hoping they're here. Dr. Karen Lewis, Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Roberto Nunez, Director of Leadership in School Systems, and Claudia Morales, Educational Administrator.
Okay. Do we have
Do we,
everybody?
we confirm that we have our guests? Awesome. Does anybody need to recuse themselves? All right, no. Dr. Solari, will you begin, please?
Certainly. Could you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure. So, hello, welcome back from lunch, committee members. The report I am introducing today is for the accreditation visit to the Monterey County Office of Education. The Monterey County Office of Education offers 2 educator preparation programs, a teacher induction program and a clear administrative services credential program. A site visit was held virtually October 10th through the 12th, just 2 weeks ago. We had a team of 4 reviewers who reviewed the common standards and the program standards for each program offered. The team members were really diligent in their work prior to the site visit and even during the site visit to gather evidence via interviews, artifacts posted on the website, and any data, published data, to come to a recommendation of accreditation with probationary stipulations. So before I turn this over to the team lead for her to go into more detail, I really want to thank our accreditation site visit team members who, as you know, are volunteers and give their time generously to ensure that California standards are upheld. So with that, I see we have Amanda here, and she was our team lead, and I'll let her continue.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for having me today. I also want to take a moment to thank our team and our consultants. This is very important work, and I feel like we did a great job supporting each other throughout and prior to the visit. The rationale for this decision, the unanimous recommendation of our team is accreditation with probationary stipulations was based on a thorough review of all institutional and programmatic information and materials available prior to and during the accreditation site visit, including interviews with administrators, faculty, candidates, completers, and local school personnel. The team obtained sufficient and consistent information that led to a high degree of confidence in making overall and programmatic judgments about the professional education unit's operation. The decision pertaining to the accreditation status of the institution was based upon the following. For preconditions, all preconditions were aligned with the exception of precondition 5 of the teacher induction program, which was not met. For program standards, the Clear Administrative Services Credential Program, Standard 5 was met. Program Standards 1 was met with concern, and Program Standards 2, 3, and 4 were not met. Teacher Induction Program, Standard 3 was met. Program Standards 1, 2, 4, and 5 were met with concerns, and Program Standard 6 was not met. For the Common Standards, Common Standard 3 was met with concerns, and Common Standards 1, 2, 4, and 5 were not met. It was the overall recommendation for the Monterey County Office of Education for accreditation with probationary stipulations based upon the findings of 1 common standard as met with concerns and 4 common standards as not met, 1 program standard met, 1 program standard met with concerns, and 4 program standards not met for the Clear Administrative Services Credential Program, and 1 program standard met for 4 program standards with concerns, and 1 program standards not met with Teacher Induction Program. And the evidence from the visit verified for induction candidates in the Clear Administrative Services Credential and Teacher Induction Program were not aligned to the current program standards, which were adopted in 2016 for both Teacher Induction and Clear Administrative Services programs. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We now invite institutional representatives to briefly comment on the report. would you like to make any comment about this? This isn't the time to dispute the findings, but to provide contextual information about your program.
Dr. Nunez,
Is that us? I'm not too clear here. Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, my name is Roberto Nunez. I'm a director of leadership and school systems here at the Monterey County Office of Ed. And I just want to thank the panel members for giving us this opportunity to be here present with you all today. We just want you to know that, on behalf of my immediate supervisor, Dr. Karen Lewis, she sends her apologies for not being able to make it here today. She's unfortunately at another important meeting in Oakland. So she also just wanted to make sure that she wanted, on behalf of our organization, to thank everyone for all the hard and diligent work that they put into this process. This was an interesting process and definitely a learning experience for us as we're going through this, but we just want everyone to know that we are more than committed to continuous improvement and excellence in educator preparation. And we just want you all to know that we've already created an action plan that'll guide our work, and with all these findings that we're addressing within these, we've already started on some, but our goal is for 60-day time period. And so if that's an artifact that you all want to see, we'd be more than glad to share that with you all today. But again, thank you to the visitation committee for their hard and diligent work, and we are growing through this process, and we look forward to continued improvement.
Thank you. Other representatives of the institution.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Claudia Morales, the Educational Administrator for the Teacher Induction Program. And I just kind of want to echo what Dr. Nunez has just said, that we are on this pathway to make the improvements necessary so that we can continue our programs here at MCOE, for the benefit of the folks that we serve, and ultimately the students. So once again, thank you for giving us this opportunity to learn and grow from.
Thank you. I understand we have public comment on this item. Feel free to come forward, and please use your mic so that we can hear what you have to say.
Through the co-chairs, members of the committee, I'm Steve McDougall with CFT, a union of educators, professionals, and classified professionals. And I want to make comment on this program because I have seen, experienced, worked with, among some of the folks that have been through this program in the Salinas Union High School District. And I think they're lucky that they're getting what they're getting today. They put out candidates for administration that don't even, I'm not kidding, understand the difference between equity and equality. They don't understand budgets and LCAP. They don't understand priorities. They don't understand how to serve best the students that generate the most revenue through the LCAP local control funding formula. They don't understand the instance of being self-actualized in the work. And the running joke, at least in my part of Monterey County, is if you're looking for the easiest way, just like electricity, taking the least path of resistance to get an administrative clear credential, it's through this program. I'd keep them under your microscope, hold them to. I'm not even sure they're serious about what I just heard about what's going on with them. And I think the assistant soup should have been here or on Zoom. But I hope they're taking you seriously, and I'll be shocked if they square it away in the timeline that's been assigned. Hopefully they will. Hopefully I've been heard. Hopefully CFT's been heard. We have 1,000 members in the Salinas Union High School District and a few more in North Monterey County Union Unified School District. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
I got it.
now it's an opportunity for discussion among COA members. Any comments, questions, or things to say? Member Morrison, and then we'll come down to you, Member Taylor.
I'm looking through the staff recommendations here of things that need to be done immediately, and I'm sure some of my colleagues will touch on them in a minute. But one of the things that we were just told was that already actions being taken to put some of this in place. So I wonder, could you just give me a couple of specific examples of some of the things that's being implemented straight away to address these concerns?
Dr. Nunez, it sounds like that question is directed to you.
Yes, I'm sorry, Dr. Nunez.
Or Ms. Morales.
I think you're muted.
I thought I was off of mute. Sorry. Yes. Like I just shared a little bit ago, we put all the findings on an organized document, and we've created an action plan. I would be more than glad to share that with you all. One of the first things that were recommended was for within 10 days for our policy to make sure that they're within our teacher induction program, that there's a clear distinction, explicit statements saying that none of this information or this process will be used for evaluatory purposes. And that was the first bullet that was in the report. So we've already, changed our handbook to state that explicitly. Ms. Morales has already scheduled a meeting with all the program advisors to make sure that we explicitly share that with all the coaches, and making sure that within our process every year we're going to make sure that we're explicitly stating that. We're also going to add that statement as a drop down bulleted item on our webpage to make sure that whenever someone goes in there, they see that's one of the first things that they see. As far as for the other findings for the admin induction, a lot of that, as we reviewed it, it seems like it was more of the organizational process. You heard that to be brought back up to the 2016 standards. And so we feel like a lot of that is just making sure that we have the processes a little bit more organized. And so we're just basically revamping our handbook, and we've already been, going off of that process. Dr. Solari Colombini shared with us an example of Santa Ana Unified School District. And so we've looked at a couple of examples of how that can be better organized and make sure that all the information that is needed is clearly stated out in the handbook. So we've already created our Google Slides presentation to create the handbook in a more digital form and easy user-friendly format for participants to be able to follow along. Those are just some of the examples. But again, I can share that document with you right now if you'd like.
Well, I would hope we're going to get it at some point. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Member Taylor.
Yeah. First of all, I think the report is well written, but the outcome of the report is the worst one I've seen so far. And I've been on this committee for a number of years. Could you outline for me, or somebody from the county office there, how did it get this bad?
So how did it get this bad was what I heard Member Taylor saying. Dr. Nunez, Ms. Morales, would you like to respond to that?
Well, I don't have any context as to the previous process that transpired in 2016. None of the members that are currently overseeing the program were here during the last visitation, and that's a great question, because when we took over the program, the way the program was running, there were no changes made to the program. So, we're just as that's a perplexing question because nothing continued differently. Like there were no changes made. Everything was just from the way we were trained, and those folks have since retired, and so there were no changes made by my part or Claudia's part whatsoever. So, like I said, we see this as a golden opportunity to learn through this experience. Obviously, we do not sit well with any type of mediocrity, and so we appreciate this information to better the programs at the level that they're expected to be at.
Member Hollis and then Member Creasha.
Thank you so much for that response, and it's good to see you're being so proactive after this visit. Since this is an accreditation cycle, you mentioned no changes since 2016. Can you talk a little bit about how you approach the accreditation cycle activities, like submitting your program review and common standard submission, and what type of feedback you got, and maybe what you did or didn't do between those accreditation activities and the site visit?
And I just want to say that when I came into this position last August, I learned that, you're in this cycle. So, information was shared about these preconditions that had been submitted. And so along the way, I was guided, or I was able to reach out to Sarah Solari with questions and how to submit information, what kinds of pieces of evidence were appropriate to submit for information. And so for me, it's been kind of this learning curve of this accreditation piece. So, along the way, as we, as we're responding to the review and to the addendums, it gave me a chance to learn about this process as I was coming in new. So everything really was via Zoom or via phone call, and through digital documents, at least on my end.
Thank you, Member Creasha.
That was actually going to be my question, but I would just like to say that the report is definitely very well detailed and well written, and just know that everybody on this body has been through this in one way, shape, form, or another, and it is very difficult. But I would just say, take this opportunity to really look at all the details that are in this report, and again, remember that it is a cycle. And yes, when leadership changes, that can be problematic, but again, we are charged. We are charged with this, and it is very, very critical and important. So I just hope that you will take this and really dig in deep, because we are here to help. And that report is very well written and should really provide a roadmap for you to really get back up on your feet. And thank you for your work.
Thank you, Member Cervantes.
Yeah, I'd like to echo those comments. I mean, you have a delineated breakdown on how you can start to meet and address the significant changes that need to take place. I definitely would recommend you looking at 3A, the development and articulation of a research-based vision for your program. I would start there. And I would, again, in the interest of getting your local community involved, think of the school districts. We talked about teachers in the community, as well as institutions of higher education that can perhaps provide initial support to get you going. But yeah, creating beyond an action plan, and something I'd like to problematize is when something is listed as not being met and so forth, the response shouldn't be, let me answer that question, let me address that snip and bit. It's about having a holistic approach to try to better your entire situation and work on the advancement of your program so that it's actually building efficacy at all levels and not just addressing the concerns that were listed on a document. So take the document as a tool to help you improve, but think holistically about your program. And I'd start with that research-based vision in teaching and learning that you can apply across the board.
Any other comments or questions from COA members? I was just going to suggest, in light of Member Cervantes's comments just now too, that connecting with a regional or similar program that serves candidates like yours, you have 200 people in this program right now. That's a lot. So turning this around right away is imperative. And if you can connect with a similar program, a program with similar needs or potentially a similar design structure, I think that would be really helpful to you as well. Not to take or rip off their stuff, but obviously to consider how they've approached the same charge that you have. As Member Cretia said, we're charged with ensuring that all programs are generating evidence that they're aligned with a very clear set of standards. So again, I think the comment that the report gives very specific guidelines and suggestions is well said. Let's get beyond the first bullet says to, as Member Cervantes said, the bigger charge of what's going to prepare new teachers and new administrators to be ready for the real challenges that we heard outlined earlier by our public speaker. Yeah, rebrand it, start over is the new opportunity, the new thing. This is an action item. Any motions? Member Taylor.
I have a question actually for staff. If the committee follows the recommendation of probation with stipulations, and significant progress is not made, can accreditation be denied subsequently? Or, you know, how does that happen?
Yes, the COA has that authority to close a program or both programs if it desires to do so at any point in time. Yes.
Because there's so much here that doesn't meet that I'm sort of leaning towards denial of accreditation, if I'm honest.
One of the
falls within that
yes
band.
Absolutely. One of the recommendations from the team is for a quarterly report, for quarterly reports, which makes sense for probationary stipulations, but if that's where you land. But you might want to think about making the first one at your January meeting so that you have an immediate response and having a chance to look at that action plan and see what progress is being made already.
Yeah, I would feel more comfortable seeing something sooner rather than later, given the severity. I would say that we would really want to look at something that would be happening in January as opposed to waiting. And then, you know, because we obviously want to give, you know, them the opportunity to get on their feet and get going, because it is a rebrand type of situation.
I'm sorry. I just want to make sure a rebrand because the 2016 standards were adopted for both admin credential programs and teacher induction programs. And Claudia shared with us, she just joined last year. Roberto has been there for 6-7 years, Roberto, with the clear admin program for longer than
5 years. Yeah.
5 years. Thank you. 5 years with the admin. So I just want to make sure if we're talking about things, let me know which program, just so I'm clear. Thanks.
Admin, what I'm talking about immediately, you know, for the immediate type of info.
I don't think, yeah. So it sounds like I just heard a request for significantly more information on the clear admin program that seems to require the most evidence of implementation of the standards. And I might suggest that evidence go beyond published documents, that it include structural organization of the program and vision, guiding philosophies, and a plan for communicating those with all the participants. Yes. Member Morrison.
Just want to pick up what Kevin was talking about. If something either now or if the committee wasn't satisfied with what was happening in January, if the denial of accreditation took place, just what would be the process? What would happen to the people who are in the program now?
Cheryl, do you?
Yeah, there is language in our handbook that talks about the if you were to deny accreditation. I don't have it open at the moment, but there is the program would have to close by the end of the term, I believe. I'm going to have to relook at that section of the handbook. I think it's is it chapter 3, chapter 8? Aaron's pulling it up, and we can have a reference for that. We would fall back on a teach out plan. So the candidates would have to enroll in another program, and the institution would have to facilitate that or complete the candidates that are near completion.
Yes, Member McKee.
And I appreciate my member colleagues asking for a follow-up in January, because I'm just processing in my mind that the program went through what we're all familiar with, which a year out, they know of the visit and had opportunities to make changes prior to the site visit. And this is the result of that. So with knowledge, we're here. And so I think it's very important that we see things sooner or later, because these changes, there were, unless I'm misunderstanding, there were opportunities not to have us to be at this point. Am I accurate on that? Okay.
Yes. So they received their program review feedback from reviewers. They received their common standards ahead of time. And then staff works with them over the course of between 8 months and a year in advance, usually monthly, to say, okay, here's what the reviewers have said. What are you thinking about? And kind of assisting in that respect. So that's the process for all site visits.
Co-chair Chakowski, I do have the handbook language up. Would you all like me to? Okay. So it is in chapter 8. So there is a heading, denial of accreditation. I am on page 10, if anybody in the public is following along. It's right at the top. The COA can deny accreditation upon either the result of findings from a regularly scheduled accreditation visit or after a revisit. Denial typically comes after a finding of probationary status at an initial visit and after the institution has been provided with an opportunity to institute improvements. However, a review team can recommend denial of accreditation at any time if the situation warrants the finding. That's just sort of the application of the denial piece, but there's nothing different in what Cheryl had said, which is denial would require them to have it, and they all have to show us a teach out plan in their preconditions. Everybody does that. So they would have to find placements for all of their candidates and teach them all out.
Member Taylor.
Thank you for clarifying that. And for the record, it's nice that there's a plan in place, but it's past time for planning. There's been ample time for planning, and now is the time for action. And if I'm not convinced that significant progress has been made at the next meeting of the COA, then I just wanted to go on record that I'm planning to vote for denial of accreditation. I don't want the institution to be under any misconception there. There's ample evidence that change needs to be made. It needs to be made effectively and immediately.
Yes, Member Hollis.
Yeah, I'd like to add, we mentioned specifically the clear admin services coming back in January with something, but I think it's equally important the teacher induction program also present that detailed plan, just because there's 130 candidates enrolled. It's twice the size. So I think it should, and they received, pretty much the same, met with concerns or not met.
So what I heard, and is there anybody else who would like to contribute? So what I heard was a request for a report in January on both programs to address all the stipulations that have been offered to us today. Okay. Does anybody want to make a motion? Yeah, Member Morrison.
I move that we recommend that we accept the recommendation of accreditation with probationary stipulations, with the added stipulation that we receive detailed reports on progress in January.
At our January COA
January COA meeting, yes.
Yeah, Member Lee. Okay, seconded by Member Lee. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, there we go. Motion carries. Well, shall we do staff reports? Shall we return to item 6? What do you think? Okay, we're going to go back to the future, item 6. Thank you very much for joining us, Monterey. We'll see you in January. All right, let's see item 6. Okay, so item 6 is the report of program status changes, and it's divided into 2 parts. Part 1 includes items for action by the COA, and Part 2 are items for formal notification and don't require any action. So today we have Part 1A to act upon and Part 2, D, and E for notification only. All right, Part 1. Sections A, B, and C is what we're going to look at first. So Part 1 for COA action includes requests to withdraw, requests to reactivate, inactive programs. This is the icy section of the agenda. And or sorry, that was code word. You have to be here in the morning to understand that. And or request to add new content area to an existing program. Today there are only items for A and C. All right. Section A is for program withdrawals. Section A is for action. One program sponsor is withdrawing 2 programs. Withdrawing. So 6 feet. Point Loma Nazarene University is proposing to withdraw teacher induction effective November 1st, 2023. And also pupil personnel services, child welfare, and attendance effective the same day. And this is an item for action. Any recusals for Point Loma? All right. Looking for a motion. Yes, Member Hollis.
I move we accept the recommendation for the withdrawal of Point Loma Nazarene University's teacher induction and pupil personnel services, child welfare, and attendance effective November 1st, 2023.
All right, well done. Second, Member Cervantes. All in favor? Anybody opposed? All right, motion carries. Moving on to Part 2, Sections D and E. Part 2 provides information on programs that have transitioned or revised program standards and programs that have elected to change to inactive status. These items are for notification only and don't require our action. All right, so Section D is notification about the transition of professional preparation programs. And one of them is child welfare and attendance. So the one institution listed in this item completed all components of the child welfare and attendance transition plan, CSU Long Beach. Congratulations to them. Thank you for your work on that. Bilingual authorization programs. The following 8 institutions have completed the documentation review to transition to recently updated standards for bilingual authorization effective July 1st, 2023. Those 8 institutions include Cal Cal Poly Pomona, CSU Dominguez Hills, Cal State Long Beach, CSU Northridge, Cal State Sacramento, Santa Clara University, UC Merced, and Whittier College. Yes, Cheryl.
I just wanted to see if we could call in Miranda Gutierrez just for a moment. Miranda, are you there? Thank you, Miranda. I wanted to acknowledge the work that goes into these transition plan reviews, and Miranda has been leading the work in and around looking at the transition plans for the new standards. And I asked her to give a quick update on what institutions are remaining and where we are.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so it has been a great staff effort. So appreciate all the staff participating and collaborating on this project. So far we've noticed 36 institutions T, and those include those that are listed today. We still have about 8 that we're working with, and really that work is just getting clarification on some of the components of their plan of how they're implementing, just because these are new BTPEs and there's the new fieldwork requirements. So there are just a few more things that we're trying to understand from 8 more institutions.
And I just want to say that this kind of work is very important because, as we saw in the last item that we were talking about, making sure institutions understand the changes that the commission has put in place. And that's why these transition plans are critical. So it mostly highlights to them that certain things need to be adjusted and that kind of thing. So just wanted to acknowledge that work. Thank you, Miranda.
Yeah, big thanks to Miranda and everybody else for their support of these diverse institutions to make these changes that are necessary. Cool. So section E is about programs moving to inactive status, and there's one program sponsor moving one program to inactive status. We don't have to act on this. Sonoma County Office of Education is moving its designated subjects adult ed program to inactive status effective today. All right. Good. Item 6, which takes us to staff reports, I believe. No?
Is that right? 14
Okay.
first.
Oh, right.
Item 14.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
All right.
Big one.
Item 14. Oh, right. This is the discussion and approval of COA annual report to the commission. It's kind of an important thing right there. So Administrator Cheryl Hickey will introduce this item. Thank you.
Yeah, I won't take very long, but every year we summarize the work that the Committee on Accreditation does, and our 2 co-chairs present to the commission in December. And it's a really good conversation because it connects that connection between the commission policy and the implementation of their accreditation system through all of you. So we have a draft of the report today for you to hopefully approve, because this is your last meeting before we have to present it to the committee or to the commission. And we tried to summarize. I want to thank Michelle Bernardo over there on the side, who puts together a large chunk of this and keeps track of all the standards findings and the accreditation findings and the follow-up and all of that. So Michelle does a lot of work on this agenda item. Typically this has a letter. Frankly, I just ran out of time to write the letter that goes at the beginning. So I would like to be able to work with our 2 co-chairs because they signed the letter. So what I'm proposing is that we take whatever changes you would like to see or edits that need to be made. And in your action to approve this, you direct us to make those changes, and I will be happy to work with, and Erin and I will be happy to work with our 2 co-chairs to make those adjustments and to have them finalize the report, and anything you want to see in here. One of the things that our executive director kind of mentioned to me at one point in time was kind of summarizing some of the trends that we see that's not part of this, but we certainly could include that as some of our oral parts of the presentation to the commission. So if there's anything specific that you would like us to make sure that the commission knows, we're happy to include that in the report. This year, these 2 co-chairs will be presenting. Usually it's the one from the previous year, but Marty Martinez is not available and Katrina is available. So we're very thankful for that. And so I look forward to that conversation. So I think with that, I'm happy to take whatever suggestions, changes you see at edits. I'm sure there are typos in here. we will come back to that and certainly fix those kinds of things. And if you do see typos, you can certainly send them to me after the fact and I can make those changes. We don't have to discuss those here. That's it.
Cheryl, when you talk about trends, can you just explain a little bit more what you're talking about? And then if anybody in here who's been around for the last year has any input about that, maybe we just talk about that for a few minutes.
Well, some of the trends that we're seeing, especially Aaron and I and the commission staff, aren't necessarily related directly to accreditation. But for instance, we're seeing a lot of blurring right now. So we're seeing a lot of institutions having to serve or really working to serve candidates that are on either an emergency permit or in some sort of, they're not an intern, they're not just a student teacher, but they're in some sort of employment category and trying to figure out how to serve them best. There's that kind of issue. We're also seeing some programs in which they're not, we used to categorize them by post-bac or undergraduate, and now we're seeing a little blurring of that, that they are kind of a combination of both. Like some of it is in the undergraduate space and some of it is, so there's a lot of stuff happening. And I think some of it is from just a lot of the changes that have needed to take place. Also just the demand and the teacher shortage and employers really needing to be able to, so far they've been, in some cases, what we've been hearing is they're plucking them out of student teaching programs. They're putting them into some sort of position and they need to continue to be served. So it's a lot of just new territory, I guess I'd say, that we're trying to figure out where the commission's parameters are around that. So those kinds of things we wanted to at least mention, that the grounds seem to be shifting a little bit and we're trying to get our policy to be in line with some of those changes.
Right. I mean, that all sounds like very important information for the commission to consider, and not least in the context of what we heard today about, programs offering, support to people once they've got the paper and qualify, even though they've been with kids months before that. I mean, that is too long to wait for people to learn all these incredibly bad habits without the support that they need to succeed, right? But if you're only given funding like per capita, the way some districts might calculate it, then there isn't the resource to support exactly the new teachers who need that support. So yeah, I think that might be a little bit of a pickle to consider.
The other is the demand for mentors, just the burden on teachers right now and being able to have that time to be able to do it. Is that what you were going to say? Sorry.
Perhaps is also providing that sort of that forest view of like, these are the types of programs we're seeing withdrawals from. These are the ones we are seeing, proposals for. IHEs tend to lean in this direction, county offices of ed in this one, school districts in this other direction, or maybe there's a combo of each. But I was also thinking if we went not micro or granular, but I've noticed just in my year here, there is a little bit of a trend and pattern on sort of mentorship and issues related to it. It almost feels like we have the program now, we're sort of running around trying to figure out how to get mentors. But I think it speaks to something bigger on like, there's a compliance issue that we want to meet and we're trying to find a way to meet it versus meeting it with quality assurance. And it could also push us to think about how we can best support these places before approving them, right? So I'd like to see how you would go about setting this component up so that you're not running like a chicken with your head cut off trying to make it work. So and this last county office we were going over, part of what I sort of felt was there was a sort of a reactive approach versus a proactive one where it's because we're getting dinged that we're going to address some things instead of we really want to create a quality program that that folks want to do. And there's also this perception of, are we the only game in town, or the closest game in town, or the least expensive game in town? And this is why folks are going to flock this way anyway. I was taking to heart the comments that were shared with us on how the public perception of the respective program.
Well, and I'm thinking back to something else that you said earlier. I mean, I do think a trend is a deprofessionalization of educators, and that is directly related to why fewer people step up to be mentors. It's why there's a perception that you just get rubber stamped and passed along. And this isn't a California problem primarily. Can you imagine being an educator in some of the other states in this union right now? I mean, that is a big contrast. So on one hand, we suffer from it here, but that, thinking about how do you get the ed specialist people, how do you attract them? Member McKee was proposing alternative models of induction, thinking out of the box, thinking different ways. I think there's a trend against that, which is apparently what trauma-informed care would predict, that when you are consistently told that you are not quality through whatever channels, you start to behave very defensively. And all the magic that Ms. Mendoza sits on over there with her grants and cool things like that, I mean, I don't even know. I mean, I hope you can give away all your money, but I would bet that you may have more money than you have programs that want to pick up and run with, because the climate has just changed so much from even how it was 10 years ago in terms of seeing education and seeing teaching as a creative, innovative place. And this group continues to push for all that, continues to push for different models. It's not one size fits all. It's not a model of accreditation that forces you to conform to some single way of implementing standards. And I don't know. I think there's increasing challenge in making that work. You people, the consultants here, working double time to try to maintain this collective vision and sense of purpose that we have here in the face of this negative public energy. I don't know. Maybe I just went off and just said a bunch of weird stuff, but I do think if that counts as trend, it's happening. Yeah, member Krisha.
Well, California and the nation actually go through these cycles. And, COVID really disrupted a cycle and exacerbated and showed a lot of ills that were already there to begin with. But, you have this way back when, I'm not going to say the date because I don't want to date myself, but, teachers were coming in, they were being trained, and it was like, oh my God, they're not qualified. So let's, do different things to make, to help them get qualified. And then it's like, oh my gosh, did we make it too difficult? Or, oh my gosh, and so then the pendulum goes the other way. And COVID really disrupted that usual swing, and so when we talk about these trends and, we can't even get started on the whole politics because there was another, actor that disrupted things too. So, I mean, but it changed the trajectory, and it created some different trends that we were not necessarily ready or, used to. But I will say that I do see a trend in that I think California has really done some due diligence in trying to create new laws and new policies to kind of help with all of that and to kind of create a little bit more of a stable environment. So, trends, but again, it's difficult to kind of, policy and laws, they move slowly. So,
Now, one of the things that I've been reflecting on over the last few weeks as we just submitted our program reports for accreditation is we talk a lot about continuous improvement as being an internal function, which it certainly is. And yet, from a trend standpoint, especially with the COA, one of the things that I'm seeing is how critical the COA is and the staff to continuous improvement. As we saw in the last report, not attending to the recommendations is a serious red flag. And yet, as we're going through it, as I'm going through it personally with our submission, I'm actually taking in that feedback from the reviewers going, what a great opportunity for us to really re-examine what it is that we're doing. And I think making sure that we communicate that as a body, because I think that's where we actually help step in to improve the overall preparation of educators throughout the state. And that's a great function, I think, of this group.
Yes, Member McKee.
Member Hillis said exactly what I wanted to say, because there's a trend, and the trend is support. The trend is support with everyone here within this office. I went through accreditation for both programs myself, and Cheryl, I asked you a question, I knew the answer, but I wanted to verify. I know what happened a year out. I know what happened months out. I know the supports that I was given, and I'm assuming, I had Gay Roby, she's phenomenal, but and I know Sarah, and she's phenomenal. Everyone's phenomenal. Everyone I've ever worked with. How do we keep you open? How do we support? And when I look at the data and the numbers, BIR trained people, it's the processes and systems in place are so strong. So when we read reports or other things, like if there's there can't be a misstep, because the trend is to succeed in support of new educators and support of students. That's all. That's why I joined and asked to join and applied, because I know the successful system that's here in place and everyone we're surrounded with. So I think it can't be ignored that there is that trend of support outside of this meeting to all of our programs. We can contact, email. I saw the PSD office hours. There's something that's a need out there. There is a solution. And you hear people, there's clusters and cohorts. It's so rich, and I'm so proud of what we have as a state. I don't know what other states have, as you shared earlier, but there's no reason but to succeed.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. I mean, we're going to go and just say we think COA and staff rock. I mean, that's basically what we're going to do. And yay, we're here in California today. I mean, this is literally, I think this is my 6th year on this august group. And as I was telling some people at lunch, every year I'm amazed by how the good thing has not fallen apart. Do you know what I mean? Like we were saying, one of the biggest challenges in education isn't starting something new. It's keeping good things from falling apart, which is a different challenge altogether, right? And one of the good things, it's pretty phenomenal. External, internal support, accountability. It's like perfect parenting. So think of all the little children out there who are going to grow up into these magnificent districts. I don't know. It's kind of exciting. Any other trends or contributions to the report as of yet, knowing that Cheryl invited all ex post facto commentary? Okay. Got what you need there for now?
I think so.
Okay, cool. All right, let's see. Item 15.
I think this is
an action item.
So
oh, this is an action. Oh, we have to approve. We have to approve the report as written, comma, pending potential letter insert, etc.
Exactly. Working with the co-chairs.
Somebody needs to move, but that happens. Yes, Member Cervantes.
I move that we accept the annual report of the Committee on Accreditation 2022, 2023, and any other additions that may come to it.
Second. Member Lee, thank you. Favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you for putting that all together, Michelle, et al.
If I can, as Cheryl sat at the end of the table, giving her kudos and appreciation to everybody who helped with the report. She does a massive amount of work, and I just want to make sure that she can't toot her own horn, so I would like to toot it for her. Yeah.
Okay, finger snapping.
Only with the partnership with Aaron and staff.
Aw. Group hug. All right. I think that takes us here to item 15. Let's see, which is a discussion of new open meeting law affecting COA. And this is again, Cheryl, who will introduce the item.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to say on this right now. We are supposed to get a briefing on this so that we understand very clearly. But there was a bill that was passed that adjusted the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act, which is what you all fall under because you are appointed by the commission. And the bill or the law now changed the Bagley-Keene Act for a couple of additional years. What they found was that, and I gave you the analysis because I think sometimes it's easier to read the analysis than it is to read the actual bill. But I think what happened with COVID is that it became very apparent that the use of technology has actually benefited a lot of people in terms of, people can't always come to Sacramento for a variety of reasons. So I think what the authors of the bill are trying to do is expand access. So relooking at the Open Meeting Act in light of 2023 realities and the tools that we have available. There's a couple of questions that I have, and our legal staff is going to give us a briefing. So I just wanted you to be aware that things change as of January 1. And what I do know is that when you meet in person, you have to have at least a majority of people meeting in person. And it sounds like others may be able to join remotely, like say you have a cold or something like that. I need to verify what allows someone to participate remotely. So that's the piece I'm not completely clear that I understand the law yet. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. We will probably provide you with some sort of update between now and the January meeting in terms of an email. So that's it. There's no action on this one.
Okay, thank you. Bagley-Keene updated on the way. All right, so then that, I think, now takes us to item 17, which is staff reports, and we have some updates.
Maybe, David, do you want to come and start? I'll defer to my director first. Whatever he wanted to mention.
I'm going to warn you that I'm going to be a broken record this year. And the thing that I'm always going to talk about this year are the literacy TPAs and standards.
Mm-hmm.
So we're implementing SB 488. The commission approved new literacy standards and TPAs last October, and then a second grouping in February. All programs have until July 1, 2024. So this coming summer to align with the new standards. And SB 488 requires that the commission certify that every multiple subject and education specialist program in the state is teaching we don't have to certify the whole standard and all the TPEs, but really a narrow band of them related to foundational reading skills. So we've had almost like a task force, Cheryl, working on developing documentation for what that certification process is going to look like. We should have something out in the next couple of weeks so that programs can start preparing for that. But the bottom line is if you do not have 2 literacy courses, you might want to rethink that because those TPEs are much denser than I think any of our other TPEs. A lot was expected in SB 488. So, and we have to remember, where did this come from? This came from our students, our California students, not scoring as well as we want on literacy assessments, reading and literacy assessments. In fact, towards the bottom of the rankings among states. And also so many parents wanting their, knowing that their child is struggling learning how to read and not getting the support that they need. So that's really the goal, is to make sure that every California child learns to read, and that every teacher is prepared. So that's what you're going to hear from me all year.
Yes.
Can I ask a question about that? So I've been kind of just reading about that, and it sounds like there's quite a bit of resistance from the field, that there are teachers who want kids to learn to read, but who don't necessarily subscribe to the pedagogical shifts that are being expected of them. Is
So
that
that's a
accurate?
great question. In terms of our responsibility is teacher preparation, and there has not been pushback that I have heard, and I don't think that our staff have heard, other than, you know what, these TPEs are really dense. There's a lot there. There's a lot there. What you've read about are districts where there are teachers, in some cases administrators, who are resistant to, you know, whether you call it scientifically based reading instruction, the science of reading, but basically a foundation, you know, those foundational skills. And that is going to be the big challenge for the state, because we're going to be preparing teachers who are ready to meet kids' needs. But if they are working in a district that does not have a curriculum that supports that, it's going to be very challenging and frustrating for those new teachers.
So that has direct implications for things like induction and who mentors whom and what their skill set is, and whether they've been around forever, but maybe they're still teaching the way they did a long time ago.
Yep, Lucy Calkins is very popular still. But you know, another thing I can say is that we have been working very closely with the California Department of Education, and in fact, our lead consultant Nancy Brynelson is now co-state director for literacy at the CDE.
That's awesome. I knew her with the whole ERWC thing. Yeah, sorry, that's my editorial comment.
Okay, we love her too.
Say hi from me, group hug.
So we continue to work with them, and we share trainings available for in-service teachers. As we find out about them, we'll share those in the PSD news and things like that.
Yeah, Erin.
I just want to add the struggle may not be limited to induction, because student teachers and interns have to have mentors and they have to have supports while they're learning. So it could be a struggle for preliminary programs also to find student teaching and intern settings for their candidates where they can find mentors or a system, at least at that school site, that will support what their candidates are trying to learn. So it could happen at the preliminary level as well.
Good point.
Imagine if you're student teaching for somebody who's, I mean, everything could be, you know, not aligned. Wow. Fasten your seatbelts. Yeah, Member Cretia.
Kind of a procedural, maybe logistical question regarding the transition and the plan to help get certified. So, you know, if you're in one of the cohorts for accreditation, that's going to have to turn in your preconditions, your specific preconditions and all that kind of good stuff in the program. How are you? I'm sure, I'm just imagining, I just want to make sure that that's going to be kind of addressed also in terms of if you don't want to do the work twice, in other words.
Right.
If you don't have to.
Yeah, I can answer that. One of the things we're trying to do is identify the exact TPEs that are related to this section of the law that has to be certified, and require the same kinds of things that you would for program review. So that if you've already done, and I can tell you right now, like 7A is the foundational TPE. And so, you know, a mini matrix or something related to that, so that when you get to program review, you've already done that part. You know, so we're trying the best we can to coordinate that. It's really what's in that 44259 B4A and B. I think, did I get that right? Should after all this. It basically says that the foundational skills. So it talks about phonemic awareness. It has it spelled out. Then the second one is a strong literature component, oral and reading skills, or oral and I forget exactly what the words are in that particular part of the law. And then the next two are all about diagnostic capabilities, being able to do early intervention, those kinds of things. So what we're doing is taking our TPEs and tying those directly to which ones are those, so that you aren't doing hopefully double work. You'll have to do more for program review because we're not covering the entire standard in that. But
I think though it does get into, it got me thinking about our practicum based components and how do we ensure that there are signature assignments or scaffolded assignments when you may or may not walk into a school and there's a teacher with the right disposition towards new standards. And so I'd like to cover our behinds as program sponsors and say, let's come back to our units and say, let's think up assignments. Not always a fan of, we were using simulated learning for particular aspects of the program as supplements, but I think something auxiliary that could support. I think the last thing we want to create is a challenging situation in a school where our student walks in and says, we should be doing this. And the teacher's like, let me show you what the real world looks like. And it's not about what they told you it was about. And so then you get it all lost in translation there. So, I mean, something to think about could potentially help.
I'd like to just really yes and what you just said, and just take an opportunity to call out the fact that this is another time where the relationships that you all have in the field with your LEAs are so important, as well as the relationships that you can have with each other in your various regions or your various cohorts, the types of, institutions that you are, to really talk to each other, and maybe develop some of these kinds of things that you're talking about, because it's a big shift. And so relationships are going to matter a lot if it's going to work.
So I was going to look behind my head and suggest perhaps there's a grant funded opportunity to get the
It's all
LEAs
organized
to the
assault.
meeting and say, hey, we're gonna co-plan this, and it's gonna be a signature assignment that you're heavily involved in. But the incentive, I mean, I want to show grace to the fact that they're overworked, that they're trying to figure out the day-to-day, and we need to provide an incentive or something to get folks out.
Yeah, Member Morrison.
So on that, come up from a classroom teacher perspective, I've had lots of student teachers over the years, and I've always been quite excited to be told by the student teachers what they would learn in college, and invariably I steal some of their stuff that they've brought, and I use it again the next year. So I'm not so worried about that. What I'm worried about, and I see this continually with student teachers, is the TPAs, the work that the student teachers have to do. It's overwhelming. It's just it's taken away usually from them learning what they're supposed to be doing in the class. In the last semester, my student teacher, I had to give him a week off from teaching, and I took over teaching his classes so he could work on the TPA. And I'm sure they weren't designed for that. And so that the trend I'm seeing is a kind of revolt against the kind of work that's put on teachers with those TPAs.
No,
I want to respond to that because I'm on the work group that's developing the new Cal APA with these literacy standards. And what some of the biggest debates that we have are exactly that, in terms of what's going to be in the program, what's going to be over here on the TPA, because you're right. I mean, it's a heavy lift. It's a real heavy lift. And, we do recognize that. And really, again, it's quite a debate, honestly. So just know we're thinking about it.
No, and I'm glad it's being thought about. I think there was a bill that came out of Torrance to propose a grant program, a pilot grant program for financing student teaching. The idea that we're respecting the learn to teach process, and for a lot of our first generation low income students, giving up a semester of unpaid work is tough. And the learn to teach process is one where you're taking conceptual knowledge, you're applying it and reflecting on it. I'm not reflecting on any of this. What I'm reflecting on is not having a paycheck to feed myself and the folks at home. And so when you think of all the added strains, then I have this assessment and I have the RECA and I have this other thing I got to worry about. We really need to ask ourselves, is this the best way from a setup standpoint to show competencies in all these areas? I'm not saying eliminate anything, but I am saying, is this the best way to wrap it up at the end? Yeah. Yeah, but think about all these aspects, right? And how do we also ensure that the mentorship taking place, right, is adequate, and that the student is also respecting the mentor and the mentor's abilities to lead when they're worried again about basic needs and a lot of insecurities at home. I mean, these are the things
Well, that's why we have residency, right? Residencies, I think one of the intended purposes of residency is to address so many of those many good points you just made, right? So I just wonder if residency can be wrapped into this.
It sounds like you all want to hear
Also.
from Kara. Maybe this is a good segue to
Other
Ms. Mendoza.
see now, Kara, I will know this rhetorically because I did learn from the good Professor Brennelson about rhetoric, and one of my colleagues' first comments was how, right? This is your report from the field, how there's such a good sense of partnership. Yes, coming full circle.
Sure.
Yeah, Bob.
I just want to jump in just a little bit. I've been involved with the TBA since its inception, part of the design team, and serve as a lead assessor in music and lead trainer for both cycles. And I certainly understand the overwhelming demands on students. Where I feel they would be greatly benefited would be now. I know the CTC offers so many opportunities for understanding the TPAs and how to address them, and how administrators and how program sponsors can assist the students in guiding them through the process. And I wonder if maybe there are some programs that may not be taking full advantage of those opportunities for them. I mean, there are near daily opportunities that they can seek out assistance here within the CTC. And I'm not speaking here to support the well, I am supporting the CTC, yeah. But I certainly understand the overwhelming nature. More times than not, individuals that I've spoken with, the students themselves find out that maybe they don't have the right information going into it. I also serve with others where pre-COVID, we would go in different parts of the state and we would train program sponsors how to administer the TPA, how to advise the students. We kind of lost that a bit during COVID, and CTC stepped up to do what they could virtually. And I know we've had at least one in-person training again. And every time on those process, the individuals who come over to those to learn about the TPAs from the different institutions, inevitably their comments are, this is what it's about. This is what I needed to hear. They go into it so overwhelming and so concerned on paper, but then once they start to communicate with others and find out what it's all about, it's not punitive, it's supportive. It's meant to support the students who are going through the process. And the assessors take great care to see that the students are getting the best foot forward. And I do know that there are a lot of people throughout the state who do the same work, who are working hard to make it possible for students. And every year, the TPAs are revised, they're reviewed. They go through another process of what can be done better? How can this be clearer? How could this be more supportive? So while I understand the concerns and the stresses involved, I think there are a lot of levels of support that are available for students and programs to avail themselves to.
And if I could follow up on that, we presented an annual report on performance assessment at the last commission meeting. There was really robust discussions about it. We suggested some ideas for continuous improvement that the commission will be thinking about. We also got a lot of feedback. So we hear all of this and continue to look at how we can support programs and candidates in completing their TPAs.
Thank you, David. And I'd also like to say is that whenever we do the training of new assessors, which are a couple of times a year, the feedback the assessors give and provide are always being undertaken. And there are weekly or every other week meetings of all the leads within the state. We do it virtually, and we talk about what can be done to help massage this, to help even better support for the students. So as you mentioned, the feedback is so important. So any feedback that you have, I would just encourage you to direct it to the CTC, and they'll just keep doing work on that.
As someone who is part of the Cal APA design team, again, performance assessment in teacher preparation is a good thing that we cannot let fall apart. This is something that is really remarkable. It's a star in, I think, California's accreditation system that doesn't exist in a lot of other places. Who else does things like this? I can't think of anybody, and I don't know everybody in the United States, fortunately, but you become vulnerable, right? I mean, we have to not just blindly defend this, but this is a remarkable attempt to ensure quality among people who go out into the field. Yeah, the process can be improved. Yes, it's time intensive. Perhaps Jerry's student teacher wasn't supported adequately to take care of it as he went. So he had to do it all at the last minute, right? I mean, there's all kinds of reasons why that could happen. But wow, when you think about what the system would be like without this, it's kind of sobering. So anyway, gotta keep those good things going, which is why we have Kara. So yay, you're next.
Good afternoon, everyone. Co-Chair Tchaikovsky, you were musing earlier. I wonder if we have any money left, and indeed we do have a little bit. So I'm here to report a couple things. One is we currently have 5 open RFAs. One for computer science supplementary authorization, one for reading and literacy authorization, one for classified grants. Get your applications in for that one. I think we might run out of some funds for that one. And then a school counselor residency capacity RFA and a school teacher residency capacity RFA. Coming out soon will be a teacher residency implementation and expansion, another round of that, and then the first round of school counselor implementation RFA. For those folks out there who are like, I think we might pull this off and we'd like to implement something. So that should be coming out very soon. And we have a new grant opportunity this year. The state of California has said this is very important and has put some funds behind it. And that is the Diverse Education Leadership. I know, but there's a D in there. Anyhow, we call it DELPI, Leaders, Diverse Education Leaders Pipeline Initiative. So we have been working on diversifying our teacher workforce, and now we're looking at diversifying our administrator workforce. So that RFA is right around the corner also. So teacher residency, school counselor residency, oh my gosh, where's the support for that? And I think I said in August, but I want to say it louder and prouder today, that we did award the Santa Clara County Office of Education the statewide residency technical assistance center grant. And we are so excited about this particular opportunity. Santa Clara, in conjunction with 4 other county offices of education, Humboldt, North State, Tulare County, Midland State, Santa Clara, of course, Sacramento County, and San Diego County, they will all serve as regional hubs for the teacher residency and the counselor residency programs in those areas. And they are already ripping and running and advertising that they're out and about and they're ready to start, any sort of support they can to residency programs here in the state of California. So we're excited and we're tired.
He's not busy at all.
Not at all. And yeah, that's it.
That's awesome. Erin, you want to report?
Sure. I'll keep this short and sweet, but I appreciate having a minute because I always like to plug. So program review was due on Monday, October 16th for all of the institutions in the green cohort, which is about 30. I just would like to thank all of those institutions for getting their submissions in almost entirely on time. We had one institution ask for a 30-day deferral extension. Thank you. Something, yeah. No problem with that. But it's so important that these submissions come in on time because we schedule the program review sessions months in advance because we have to in order to recruit all the people we need. So recruitment leads me to, we are really struggling to continue to recruit new people. We have so many folks out there that have been doing this with us for years, and we are so grateful to them. But we have program review, we have IPR, initial program review, we have IIA, we have subject matter programs. We have so many places where we need peer reviewers. And sometimes we really have to just dig deep. And there are institutions out there that haven't been able ever to send a representative to participate in any of these reviews. And I just would really like to encourage folks to send someone. I am not lying when I say that after almost every one of these kinds of opportunities, there's at least one person on a review team that says, I learned more doing this thing, whether it was a site visit or a program review or whatever. I learned so much, and it's going to help my program and my institution now when we have to submit. It really does happen. I'm not just making it up. So I just want to take this opportunity for everybody out there listening to please consider sending somebody for the review, and for everybody in the green cohort, thank you so much for getting all your submissions in on time. It helps us so very much.
You know, as you were speaking, Erin, and because it's both a professional development and a learning opportunity, perhaps, and I know our CSU system has this within, to build your file. You commit 2 hours of service, research, publications, and so forth. Maybe having a higher level conversation on how serving in any of these capacities, especially for your junior faculty members, could be a way to build your file. And you got about 5 or 6 years to do so. So you might have folks being able to participate on an ongoing basis. But I think if we formalized it, and I don't have an RFA idea on this yet, but if we had a training institute on just giving you nuts and bolts, what does it mean to work with a commission? Maybe generally speaking, and here are the verticals and opportunities for you to get involved. That might be a fun way to go about it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that suggestion, and thank you for that. I recently wrote probably half a dozen letters for people who have participated in the process in one way or another. It tends to come around this time of year. We get a bunch of emails. I need a letter for my file. So that does happen. And we do have training, you know, for folks that want to then eventually be on a site visit team. But yeah, any ideas anybody has for recruitment? You know, we can't make people participate. But I think I've been singing this same song about how really valuable it is for, I don't know, 8 years. So I'll keep singing until someone puts a muzzle on me.
All right. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Just as an idea, because you know everybody who's coming up through the cohorts, do you ever reach out to them like 3 years ahead of their site visit? You have a site visit coming up. This is a great professional development opportunity, because I need to concur. It's true. When I first started with BIR and went through that, I learned so much, and I feel I had a successful site visit eventually because you marinate in the standards, you marinate in everything, and you learn the why of what you do. It's not just, it's a validating process, but it's also a learning process. So since you know who's coming up the pipeline, just an email blast or just a direct contact, this is coming up. This is a great professional learning.
Well, especially for these people who haven't done it before. I mean, what a great way. I mean, I think back to when I was doing induction for the first time, I was like, colors, rain, what?
Yeah.
Like I had no idea. That would have been
teacher.
very like eye-opening.
Yeah.
I just knew it was not easy being green.
It wasn't easy being green. And that's where we are again.
And that's where we are now,
Yep.
green cohort. Yeah.
That is so coincidental because I played that Kermit the Frog video for my class yesterday.
That's amazing. I'm going to call on one more person before I say a couple things, but Rosemary Wren is part of our IPR team, and she wanted to say a couple of things on behalf of the IPR team. I think she should be here. Let's see. Can we hear her? Rosemary? Perfect.
Okay, great. Thanks. I thank you for letting us take a moment of your time. So as part of the IPR team, we have been seeing quite a lot of both intents to submit and submissions. We currently have 38 active submissions and 30 intents to submit, with a lot of questions coming in. So the team thought it might be helpful to provide a space where design teams can meet with us in real time and also engage in conversations with their peers to discuss different elements of their program design. So we're going to be offering office hours twice a month on the first and third Wednesdays from 11 to 12 on Zoom. We've already reached out to all of those folks who have submitted either intents or actual program proposals. And then the information will also be in the PSD e-news and ECE news this week. So that's all I had to say. And I thank you all for the work that you're doing.
68 between the intents and the submissions. That's crazy. So you all will be busy over the next year approving these programs. Wow. Thank you, Rosemary. Appreciate it. That is mind-boggling. Part of those are obviously the PK3 credentials, and I just wanted to give you an update on that. We continue to work on that. We have submitted and then withdrew the regulations from the Office of Administrative Law. That is just normal process. That's not anything that should be worried about. It's resubmission because when we pull it back, we get a little bit more time. So then if they were to reject it right out, and then we're able to fix the things that they need to fix and then resubmit. So we're in that resubmission process right now. So we are working on making some changes. The commission approved some adjustments. Unfortunately, the OAL didn't ask for anything major. They just asked for a lot of little tedious things, like they wanted teacher performance assessment spelled out. They wanted TPE spelled out, those kinds of things for some reason. So we worked on that, and we have to resubmit. So that's where we are with that. I just wanted to also mention there were a couple of new pieces of legislation that we're going to have to follow up on. One allows the local education agencies to offer the child welfare and attendance authorization on its own. So we are now going, and you might recall that in the new PPS standards, we have embedded the child welfare and attendance content into the other PPS content, and that those candidates coming out of those new programs or those programs with the new standards would only then need to do the 150 hours of fieldwork. Now, if you have a program that is sort of a standalone program, we now need to decouple some of those standards so that there's something for those programs to respond to. So, so we are in the process of doing that, and that will be an early 2024 item, because we know that LA Unified, for instance, is very interested in that. The whole issue of attendance is huge, as you all know, working with. So we're going to be working on that. We are working on updating the speech language pathology standards also, because the ASHA standards were updated. So we need to realign our speech language pathology against those national standards. The last thing I'm going to mention, well, we are still moving to the new building. So we're working on trying to figure out where our May meeting will be next year, whether it's here or whether it's in the new building or someplace else. So just be flexible, if you will, in May.
Come on over to my place.
We'll go. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. We can hold it at Chapman. And then one more thing I just wanted to mention is Erin and I were talking, and preparing for an October meeting is really challenging. We are considering maybe putting a couple of different dates before you in the future for next year's fall visits, maybe early November instead of October. There are just so many conferences we have to be at and presentations we have to do, and getting the agenda ready is challenging. On top of, there are site visits that took place really closely to this meeting and we couldn't get them on. We got the Monterey one on because of the severity of the findings. So we really pushed to have that done. But we might just want to move it just a little bit. So we'll look at some dates and put those before you at the next meeting. And I think that is it for me.
Anything regarding the use of Outlook and so forth? I know some of us access the information through our phones, and there's a new system and so forth in the process.
Yeah, we'll have some folks from our IT division available as soon as y'all wrap up here to see if they can help you with that. Now, if it's a firewall issue with your own institution, I'm not sure how much our IT people can do to help you with that, unfortunately. But we'll do our best. They're pretty great folks.
I think that's it. I think we are done with our staff report.
Yeah, go ahead.
So for the diverse pipeline, so could you give us just a couple broad strokes of what that's actually going to look like?
Yes. So it's each preliminary candidate will generate $30,000 of grant funding, most of which is intended to go toward the candidate support, tuition and such. And you can carve out of that 30,000 per resident some sort of support of other administrators and in supporting diverse educators, right? Your diversity. So like maybe you have affinity spaces in, that kind of thing. And also supporting your current administrators to be those mentors as well in that program. It has a service component, just like teacher residency. But it's less years. I want to say it's only 2 years and don't quote me on that, but I think it's only 2 years instead of the 4. So it's teacher residency-esque, but different because the administrators are already teachers and they're already working but it's also to support them and to really diversify our workforce for our administrators. Yeah, good question.
Kara, super fast question. If you don't know that off the top of your head, but of course you probably do. How does the retention for residents look, 5 years in compared to teachers at large or what you expected?
So one of the things I didn't say is we'll see you at the table in December because we have 3 reports to give for grants. And one of them is the culminating report that goes to the Department of Finance for teacher residency. Because of the timing of everything, we only have 3 years of retention data, but it's looking very robust. Very robust.
Yeah. We have one section left, officially public comment. Any member of the public online in person wish to say anything?
I think we do have one.
Okay, so why don't we have our online participant go first, and then if that's okay with you, we'll come back to you. If you're online, this is your opportunity to address the COA.
Hold on. Jessica Maldonado.
Go ahead, Ms. Maldonado.
You're unmuted.
Good afternoon, and thank you. My name is Jessica Maldonado. I am a devoted member of the Diverse Education Leaders Pipeline Initiative Coalition, also known as DELPI, the Coalition of DELPI, and we're thrilled about the recent passage of DELPI by the governor and state legislature, and excited about the commission's leadership of this critical initiative. As you may be aware, DELPI will be providing $10 million in grants to local education agencies, including those that work in partnership with nonprofit educational service providers and institutions of higher education for the training, placement, and retention of over 300 diverse and culturally responsive TK through 12 administrators across the state. And we believe this initiative will be groundbreaking because it is informed by research that proves greater representation in TK through 12 leadership, and it is essential in closing longstanding equity gaps for public school students in California, especially students of color. It will also play an integral role in strengthening the preschool to leadership pipeline. And so in light of this, we joined 30 plus coalition members in asking that this commission, one, be intentional about identifying grantees that demonstrate specific expertise in diversity and culturally responsive school leadership, as this is the central focus of DELPI and the key of changing outcomes for students and families. And of course, we want to ensure a collaborative and transparent program development process that allows sufficient time for interested parties to provide input on how best to achieve diverse representation in educational leadership across the state. We thank the Commission for its commitment to this work, and we look forward to updates around the success of DELPI. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us. Additional online public comment. If you would just identify yourself and
Michael
then
McDaniel.
go ahead.
Junior.
Good afternoon, committee chair and members. My name is Michael McDaniel Jr., Political Director with Families in Action for Quality Education in Oakland, California. And I'm a devoted member of the Diverse Education Leaders Pipeline Initiative Coalition, also known as Delpi Coalition as well. And we are thrilled about the recent passage of Delpi by the governor and state legislature, and excited about the commission's leadership of this crucial initiative, which will provide $10 million in grants to local education agencies to train, place, and retain diverse and culturally responsive TK through 12 aspiring administrators. This initiative is particularly important to our organization because we have personally seen just how transformative it can be for all students in the classroom when they see people that actually have come from the same diverse backgrounds that they have. And it actually makes them more culturally responsive and able to create a place where all students feel more accepted. And we joined the 30 plus members of our coalition in asking that this commission be intentional about identifying grantees that demonstrate specific expertise in diversity and cultural responsive school leadership, as this is the central focus of Delpi and the key to changing outcomes for students and families, and ensure that a collaborative or transparent program development processes that allow sufficient time for interested parties to provide input on how best to achieve diverse representation in educational leadership across the state. We thank the commission for its commitment to this work, and we look forward to updates around the impact and success of Delpi. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for coming.
Brianna Lovett.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, committee chair and members. My name is Brianna Lovett, a decorated educator. I am a devoted member of the Diverse Education Leaders Pipeline Initiative Coalition, also known as the Delpi Coalition. We are thrilled about the recent passage of Delpi by the governor and state legislature, and excited about the commission's leadership of this critical initiative, which will provide $10 million in grants to local education agencies to train, place, and retain diverse and culturally responsive TK through 12 aspiring administrators. This initiative is particularly important to our organization because historically, Black educators face systemic discrimination, including unequal pay and limited career advancement opportunities. Adequate funding acknowledges and addresses these injustices, promoting a more equitable education system where Black educators are valued and respected. We join 30 plus members of our coalition in asking that this commission, one, be intentional about identifying grantees that demonstrate specific expertise in diversity and culturally responsive school leadership, as this is the central focus of Delpi and the key to changing outcomes for students and families. And two, ensure a collaborative and transparent program development process that allows sufficient time for interested parties to provide input on how best to achieve diverse representation in educational leadership across the state. We thank the commission for its commitment to this work, and we look forward to updates around the impact and success of Delpi. Thank you.
Thank you. Awesome. Anybody else online? All right. Thank you all for being here. We have one more in person contributor, Mr. McDougall. Go.
CFT too is a dedicated, devoted member of the Delpi Coalition. I happen to have the same exact talking points as my three coalition members. I am not going to read them for a fourth time, but I will say this. Slow down and take input from the stakeholders. And let's be sure we do this right. I will repeat that when students who are of color and come from underserved communities respond not only academically, but emotionally, much better when they have teachers and school leaders who look like them and most likely come from underserved communities as themselves. So please be mindful of that. And I'll leave it at that instead of reading the script. I do have a few other things for you. One, I too wanted to look at the documents from Sac State on the CTE credentialing program. CFT is making CTE educators a priority in the next legislative cycle. We're concerned about the lack of staffing statewide, stable staffing in CTE statewide, when the federal government has the CHIPS Act and apprenticeships that they're promoting through our national affiliate, the AFT, along with the Department of Labor. But California is actually not well positioned because we don't have the labor force, teaching labor force in place, because those folks are treated as temporary employees in most places. And without that stability, they're here today, gone tomorrow, and they're often the worst paid in their bargaining units on a separate salary schedule if they come from industry. We need to change that. I think the answer is in New York State. New York State's been doing it right for a long time through their BOCES systems. BOCES, if you know what an ROP is, BOCES is the same thing, más o menos. The SUNY system supports that with credentialing programs that are remote nowadays during the semester, but during vacations and weekends in person at a regional SUNY school. So, and while they can collect the same exact paycheck as their peer teaching AP literature and physics and I don't know, AP Chinese, so that they can afford the credentialing program. So we're going to focus on that. Hopefully we can get the preparation programs along with that. Also, there's a looming delta that's coming that I mentioned to the commission at earlier this month. I'm losing track of days, but COVID fog maybe. But especially in high school districts or high schools where there are designated ELD classes, the folks that are coming out of the institutions and programs can only teach ELs in their subject area. But in high school districts or high schools, only, I won't say old salts, seasoned educators such as myself, I know I use the O word, seasoned educators such as myself who have a CLAD or some sort of alternative towards a CLAD from 25, 30 years ago, can teach those standalone designated ELD classes that ELs have to take until they redesignate. When folks such as myself go out to pasture, we're going to roll 20-day substitutes in there for the students who generate the most revenue in LCFF? That's not right. We got to get more programs to put out those global languages, ELD credentials. There's going to be a huge delta, just like other things, but this is coming too. Administrative programs need to be aware of the new law that starts New Year's Day. SB 274 requires administrators to respond to referring staff for behavior intervention, be they classified or certificated, within 5 days, 5 business days of what they've done with a student, that they've documented, and if they didn't do anything, why? You want to know why those amendments were put into SB 274? CFT got them in there because administrators are just not getting it done. Maybe it's a Monterey County thing, but I don't think it's just a Monterey County thing. And then lastly, about reading, keep doing what you're doing with the 5 pillars of based reading for scientific approach. CFT and maybe CTA will join us in the legislature to make sure that in-service will continue that work moving forward into the future. CFT is going to work on that. Hopefully CTA will join us as well. Sorry for taking up your time. Hopefully you make your flights. That's all I have for you. Take care. This is all I have
Thank you for
CFT.
being here with us and contributing. All right, well, I think that takes us to adjournment. Thank you all for being here. Our next meeting is at the end of January. 2-day meeting.
I think it'll be 1.5 anyways. Yeah.
1.5. Thank you all. Here we are.